"You will exceed all of them, for you will sacrifice the man that clothed me." These words, stark and unsettling, are not the condemnation you might expect. Paradoxically, they are spoken by Jesus Christ himself, directed to Judas Iscariot, the disciple history is branded as the ultimate betrayer. This isn't a modern reinterpretation. This is a direct passage from an ancient rediscovered text unearthed from the sands of Egypt. It casts Judas not as a villain driven by greed, but as a pivotal figure acting on a divine command. The question then becomes inescapable. Was Judas Iscariot truly the arch-traitor, or was his infamous act a meticulously orchestrated moment of ultimate devotion? This is the profound dilemma at the heart of our investigation. Can centuries of established dogma truly be overturned by a single unearthed scroll? We embark on an academic quest, not to dismantle faith, but to meticulously follow textual evidence and historical context wherever they lead. Our aim is to uncover the hidden meanings, to challenge a narrative etched deep into our collective consciousness, and to understand the suppressed complexities of early Christian thought. To begin, we must first lay out the canonical understanding of Judas Iscariot. For nearly 2 millennia, the name Judas Iscariot has been cemented as the ultimate symbol of treachery. Across countless sermons, works of art, and theological treatises, he is painted as the greedy disciple who, for a mere 30 pieces of silver, delivered Jesus into the hands of his enemies. The canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, consistently portray his act as a calculated betrayal, a dark stain on the narrative of Christ's passion. This portrayal has profoundly shaped Christian doctrine, underscoring themes of sin, temptation, and divine justice. It's a narrative so deeply ingrained that it feels immutable, a foundational pillar of Western religious understanding. However, to truly grasp the challenge posed by our discovery, we must first acknowledge that this dominant view did not emerge in a vacuum, nor was it the only voice in the chaotic symphony of early Christian thought. To understand this radical alternative, we must transport ourselves back to the first centuries of the Common Era. This was not a period of monolithic Christian belief, but rather a vibrant, often tumultuous landscape where countless interpretations of Jesus' teachings flourished. From Alexandria to Antioch, diverse communities articulated their understanding of divinity, salvation, and the very nature of Christ. Among these varied voices emerged what scholars now term Gnosticism, a broad spectrum of movements emphasizing gnosis, or secret spiritual knowledge, as the path to salvation. They often held a radically different view of the material world, seeing it as flawed, a prison for the divine spark within. Critically, the collection of texts we now revere as the New Testament was far from a settled canon during this formative period. Instead, it was a fluid library of scrolls and codices, each vying for authority, many offering narratives profoundly different from those that ultimately prevailed. For centuries, these alternative viewpoints remained largely obscured, dismissed as heresy by the nascent Proto-Orthodox Church. But what if one of these suppressed narratives held a key to unlocking a different truth about history's most infamous act? Then, in the 1970s, something extraordinary emerged from the shifting sands of the Egyptian desert, a fragile Coptic papyrus codex. This ancient manuscript, containing texts long thought lost, embarked on a clandestine journey through illicit markets, narrowly escaping destruction. Years of neglect left it in pieces, but a dedicated international team of conservators painstakingly reassembled its fragments. Their monumental effort culminated in its authentication and eventual publication in 2006 by the National Geographic Society. This was the Gospel of Judas, and its immediate impact was nothing short of revolutionary. It didn't just add a new book to history, it threatened to rewrite the very narrative of Christendom's ultimate betrayal. But what precise textual evidence did this controversial discovery present? The Gospel of Judas, when finally translated, unveiled a narrative that defied every expectation. Unlike the canonical accounts, this text positions Judas not as an outcast, but as Jesus' most favored and understanding disciple. It records Jesus telling Judas, "You are the only one among them who can understand the mysteries of the kingdom." He even separates Judas from the other 11, confiding in him secrets about the true nature of reality that the others are too blind to grasp. Crucially, the text explicitly states Jesus' command to Judas regarding his imminent death. Jesus tells him, "You will sacrifice the man that clothed me." This isn't a betrayal for silver, it's an instruction, a preordained role for Judas to fulfill. He's not a villain, but a divine instrument tasked with liberating Jesus from his mortal coil. But what exactly does this radical instruction to sacrifice the man that clothed me imply within the complex theological landscape of Gnosticism? Its true meaning, scholars argue, reshapes our very understanding of the Passion. To grasp this, we turn to the extensive scholarship on Gnosticism, particularly the insights of figures like Elaine Pagels and James Robinson. Within the Gnostic worldview, the material world, including the human body, was often seen as a flawed creation, a prison for the divine spark or soul. Salvation wasn't about atoning for sin, but about achieving gnosis, secret knowledge that liberated the spiritual self from its physical confines. From this perspective, Jesus' instruction to Judas, "You will sacrifice the man that clothed me," takes on a profound, almost sacred meaning. Judas isn't facilitating a death as punishment, but a liberation. He is the chosen instrument for Jesus to shed his corrupt physical form, allowing his true divine essence to ascend. He becomes not the ultimate betrayer, but the pivotal agent of Jesus' spiritual triumph, acting on a divinely ordained mission. This radically redefines Judas's role, but what are the full implications of such a monumental reversal for Christian theology itself? If the Gospel of Judas holds even a kernel of truth, then the figure of Judas Iscariot undergoes a seismic transformation, shifting from history's ultimate villain to its most misunderstood hero, fundamentally reorienting core tenets of Christian theology. If Jesus' death was a deliberate act of spiritual liberation orchestrated with his closest disciple, then the traditional concept of atonement, that his sacrifice was for the forgiveness of human sin, is radically undermined. This Gnostic perspective suggests a different path to salvation, one not reliant on a sacrificial death for sin, but on secret knowledge and spiritual transcendence. The implications are profound, dismantling centuries of established dogma. However, this raises an even more pressing question. If such a transformative narrative existed, why was it suppressed, almost erased from the historical record for nearly 2 millennia? But was the Gospel of Judas merely an anomaly, a singular voice crying out from the desert? Or does its fate hint at a far larger, deliberate effort to shape what we understand as biblical truth, silencing other narratives that challenge the emerging power structures? Indeed, its discovery merely pulled back the curtain on a vast, vibrant landscape of what scholars now refer to as alternative Christianities. Consider the Gospel of Thomas, for instance, a collection of 114 cryptic sayings attributed to Jesus, unearthed decades earlier. Shockingly, it largely omits the crucifixion and resurrection, focusing instead on esoteric wisdom and the divine spark within each individual. Then there's the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, which elevates Mary to a position of profound spiritual insight, even portraying her as a confidant to whom Jesus revealed deeper truths the male disciples struggled to comprehend. These texts, alongside many others, paint a picture of an early Christian world teeming with diverse theological perspectives, where different communities interpreted Jesus' message in radically disparate ways. This rich tapestry of early Christian thought, however, presented a significant challenge to those seeking to establish a unified hierarchical church. Why then did the proto-Orthodox movement deem these alternative narratives so dangerous that they had to be systematically condemned and suppressed? The scholarly consensus, however, points to a clear motive rooted in the early church's struggle for identity and authority. Gnostic texts, with their emphasis on secret knowledge, or gnosis, and individual enlightenment, undermined the developing proto-Orthodox model. This emerging mainstream church sought a universal message, accessible to all, and a hierarchical structure led by bishops and clergy. A Christianity where salvation depended on esoteric wisdom, revealed to a select few like Judas, undermined this nascent authority. Paradoxically, the narrative of a greedy, treacherous Judas served a powerful theological purpose for the proto-Orthodox. It reinforced doctrines of sin, the necessity of Christ's atoning sacrifice, and the dangers of apostasy, providing a stark moral lesson. The canonical Judas became a potent symbol, essential for shaping a unified doctrine and controlling interpretation. But did this suppression mean the Gnostic texts held no inherent flaws or challenges that warranted their exclusion? However, intellectual honesty demands we consider the strongest counterarguments regarding the historical reliability of the Gospel of Judas itself. A primary concern for many scholars is its significantly later dating. While the canonical Gospels are largely situated in the 1st century CE, the extant Coptic manuscript of the Gospel of Judas dates to the 3rd or 4th century. This substantial temporal gap, often emphasized by traditional scholarship, suggests it reflects later theological developments and Gnostic perspectives, rather than preserving direct eyewitness accounts or early apostolic traditions. Many scholars, therefore, propose it as a polemical text, specifically crafted to challenge the emerging proto-Orthodox understanding of Jesus and his disciples, rather than offering a historically accurate narrative. Its exclusion from this viewpoint wasn't simply suppression, but a considered judgment on its veracity and theological alignment. These intricate debates over authenticity and theological integrity were, however, merely one aspect of a much larger, more deliberate process that ultimately shaped the Christian Bible we recognize today. This was a profoundly human act of selection and exclusion, not a divinely dictated list. Influential figures like Athanasius of Alexandria in 367 CE explicitly outlined what books were considered authoritative. Councils, such as Nicaea in 325 CE, reinforced the drive for doctrinal uniformity and centralized authority. This was a political and theological struggle to consolidate power and establish a singular, unified narrative. Texts like the Gospel of Judas, with their radical perspectives, were systematically pushed aside. The Canon therefore became a powerful instrument, actively shaping belief and defining what was orthodox. This curated narrative had profound consequences, not just for Judas, but for the entire history of Christian thought. What we uncover here is a profound testament to the power of narrative itself, how it's shaped, controlled, and even rewritten across millennia. The journey through texts like the Gospel of Judas, alongside the stories of Thomas and Mary, reveals the historical contingency of religious truth. The traditional Judas narrative, anchored as the ultimate symbol of betrayal and evil, was not an organic inevitability, but a deliberate construction chosen over alternative paths to spiritual liberation. This wasn't merely a theological disagreement, it was a battle for control over interpretation and, by extension, societal norms. The exclusion of these alternative gospels wasn't an oversight, it was a strategic redaction, forging a singular path for Christian doctrine. But this raises a truly provocative question. What if the Gospel of Judas had not been strategically redacted, but rather embraced and included within the biblical canon? Imagine for a moment how profoundly different Western theology, art, and even our fundamental understanding of morality would be. How would the concept of betrayal itself be transformed? Would Judas, the ultimate villain, be revered as a martyr, a hero who enabled spiritual liberation? This thought experiment forces us to confront the historical contingency of what we accept as sacred truth. It prompts us to reflect on the power of chosen narratives and the profound implications of those deliberately left behind. Now, let's consolidate what this journey through conflicting texts reveals. Our investigation has unveiled two irreconcilable portraits of Judas Iscariot. We have the canonical figure, the avaricious betrayer, a foundational symbol in the story of sin and redemption. Conversely, the Gospel of Judas presents him as the chosen instrument, the most enlightened disciple fulfilling a divine directive for spiritual liberation. This dramatic divergence was not arbitrary. It was the product of centuries of intense theological debates, strategic political maneuvering within the early church, and the deliberate human process of biblical canonization, which actively selected certain narratives while suppressing others. To truly comprehend this history demands a critical academic lens, moving beyond simple devotional readings. Yet, even with all this evidence, does the definitive truth of Judas's intentions ever truly come into focus? Ultimately, this truth remains shrouded in the mists of antiquity, forever trapped between these profoundly conflicting narratives. The discovery of texts like the Gospel of Judas doesn't offer us a simple solution or irrefutable proof. Rather, it expands our understanding of the incredibly rich, complex, and often contradictory tapestry of early Christian thought. It reminds us that history is rarely as monolithic as it appears, and the quest for understanding is an ongoing journey, fraught with paradox and unresolved questions. What further revelations might still lie buried, waiting to challenge our perceptions of sacred history? The exploration continues, and we invite you to be a part of it. Having explored these two starkly contrasting narratives, we now turn to you. Which portrayal of Judas Iscariot, The canonical betrayer or the Gnostic co-conspirator do you find more compelling or historically plausible? How do texts like the Gospel of Judas challenge or deepen your understanding of religious history and belief? Share your insights in the comments below and join our community of critical inquiry. Your engagement fuels our quest for hidden biblical truths. If you value this academic approach, consider subscribing and liking this video. The saga of Judas Iscariot, forever oscillating between betrayer and divine instrument, is but one thread in the vast, intricate tapestry of biblical mysteries. The suppression of the Gospel of Judas was a pivotal moment in shaping Christian history, but it was far from the only text to be marginalized. If exploring these hidden narratives compels you, then you'll want to delve into another figure whose story was radically reinterpreted, Mary Magdalene. Was she merely a repentant sinner or the apostle to the apostles, entrusted with secret teachings whose true role was deliberately obscured? Join us next as we uncover the suppressed narrative surrounding Mary Magdalene, challenging centuries of canonical understanding. After exploring these conflicting narratives, which portrayal of Judas, the canonical betrayer, or the Gnostic co-conspirator do you find more plausible, and why? Tell me in the comments. I read and reply to every single one. This pattern of obscured roles and suppressed texts isn't unique. Next, we uncover the true story of Mary Magdalene, sinner or apostle. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the truth. Like this video if you value uncovering these hidden narratives, and share it.